Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Gator Truth. On this episode, we're going to take a look at the Gators' upcoming trip to Lexington, Kentucky to take on the Kentucky Wildcats. And it's going to be an interesting cold night game in the 50s in Lexington, 7:30 p.m. Eastern kickoff. And I've got to say, for the stadiums I've been to around the SEC, and I can definitely say places like Neyland and Kyle Field, and let's see, where else have we been recently where I'd just praise the home field advantage. I can say the Gators at least. Oh, Death Valley, of course. I think Williams-Brice is underrated. One thing I can say though is Kroger Field will not be as hostile as anything the Gators have faced. So that's something positive going into the game. As I talk about, hey, we're getting into an interesting game, and we'll get into a lot of fun things coming up. But I just want to start off and say, with a positive note, Kroger Field is not the most intimidating environment. And I know that there might be Kentucky fans watching that are going to get in the comments, even if we lose this game. See, it's intimidating. No, it's not. I've been there. You know, it's just as loud as the home crowd as you're cheering blue and white over after almost every play. The Florida fans that decide, well, Florida's on offense to chant orange and blue while you chant blue and white, while Florida's on offense between each play. It is what it is. And I was there on a good year for Kentucky. This year, this is two teams coming in at 3-5. Last week in the battle for worst team in the SEC, Kentucky won. So in theory, well, I guess Arkansas is in that discussion too. But in my opinion, that's where we are in theory, at least, is Kentucky generally one of the worst teams in the SEC. Not that Florida's done a lot better results wise, but when you're talking Florida, you're talking about Florida playing already number one in the SEC, number one A&M, number 3 Georgia, number 4 the Longhorns, and then right in front of Florida, same record, 2-3 in the conference, LSU at LSU, along with a team right behind Mississippi State in standings, 1-4, or right behind the Gators, Mississippi State. And then you've got the 1-6 Gamecocks down there, and the Razorbacks 0-5, and then Kentucky with the edge over Auburn with the win. So they do have a win in conference, but definitely not a very motivated crowd coming in, and definitely an interesting Gators team that I believe has a chance to make a bowl. And that's all got to start. If you lose against Kentucky, it's probably gone. But if you win at Kentucky, there is still a chance left. And that's what I want to see from this team. Really go in on a cold night, do what you have to do, and get out with the win. And, you know, I talked about Florida's schedule so far. Kentucky faced Toledo, who statistically is the number 2 defense in the FBS. Now, some of that can come down to the quality of opponents that Toledo has played, and, you know, and other things. I mean, when we look, number 1's Ohio State, number 3's Iowa, number 4's Oregon, number 5's Missouri, and number 7, just for throwing that out there, is Indiana. Are there a lot of great defenses or a lot of bad offenses in the Big Ten? Who knows? We'll find out later. But anyways, I thought that Toledo thing was interesting, as Florida has faced the highest defense Florida has faced so far is number 12, Miami. But then Kentucky and Florida have similar opponents in Georgia, who Kentucky went to Georgia, lost 35-14. Texas, who Kentucky arguably should have beaten, but lost at home in overtime to Texas, where Florida got way ahead of Texas and had to hold on with a sack on the last play of the game. And obviously, I'm not a big fan of the transitive property, but for those that are, those that want to look at common opponents, that is good. We talked about South Carolina and how South Carolina is 1 and 6 in the SEC. Who was that one win against? Oh, you got it, Kentucky. But again, Kentucky beat Auburn and got Hugh Freeze fired this past week in a riveting 10-3 game at Jordan-Hare Stadium. I go through all that to begin before we talk about the offense, just to get into what I think is going to be a slog of a game. And why is it a slog of a game? Well, let's talk about the initial injury report from yesterday, Wednesday night. And we're talking about Trey Wilson, who I had tweeted this week. I said Trey Wilson is probably on pace based on the Georgia performance, and depending on the health of other receivers, he's on pace to enter the top 10 in receptions all time at Florida. He hit 100 receptions against Georgia, only needs to get up to 133 or 134, I believe, to get in the top 10. And then if he comes back next year, definitely has a shot at top 5. Well, anyways, Trey Wilson, after that great performance, praised a lot of it against Georgia. He is now out for the Kentucky game, along with Dallas Wilson, who we know is done for the year. Also, VB3 is questionable, but at least that's better than out. Granted, that could be out by the time it comes to Saturday. And Aiden Mizell, again, upgraded from out to questionable, but that could always be downgraded again. And then we have Treon Webb, who's been out for the year. Jacoby Jackson at running back is also out. And Duke Clark, our 4th string running back, who was out the last game, is questionable. But then again, KD Daniels came in, looked pretty good last week. And it's funny, we talk about he's technically our 5th string back, and here he is looking pretty decent against Georgia. Also on the out list that maybe we weren't expecting, or I wasn't sure about, we see Michael Caraway, who's played some defensive back for us. Pup Howard, who I don't believe I've seen his name on a injury report, but he's not played quite as much this year as I thought he would. Ty Jackson, freshman linebacker, also out. Shout out to him, though. Family sponsors his game day locker, so shout out to Ty Jackson. With that said, Kentucky's also got quite a number of people out. I can't tell you off the top of my head if it's anyone massive for them or not, but 2 DBs, an inside linebacker, also 2 wide receivers, and a tight end, with a probable DB and probable defensive lineman. I haven't watched enough Kentucky to say who's great for them, who's not. I'll just be honest. And the reason why I say that is it's easy to say, well, go back and look at what it should be in the preseason. Well, if you're to ask me about the preseason, who's going to be a breakout big time player for us, I would say Caleb Banks. I would say, LJ McCray. Other names that might come out, Treon Webb. But of course, they've not played too much. I would have thought Dallas Wilson would have done a lot more than he did. Now, when he played, he was fantastic. Don't get me wrong. But he participated in all of 4 games. Technically, he still got his red shirt because he played in the middle 3 with the bye week. And then he played against Georgia, unfortunately, got injured and is out for the year or exacerbated an injury to a point where he's out for the year. So with that said, just trying to look at it by that, and I only give all that because it's easiest. We could go back, look at what my buddy Jay had to say about who's going to be great for the Wildcats ahead of time. But that doesn't mean that they would have been them. Gadsden, who's out, has 2.5 sacks for the season. Oh, no. Sorry. Oh, yeah. He's probable, not out. My bad. I saw him on the report. And so anyways, that's kind of where we are. 2 teams with lots of people on the injury reports. And the reason why I bring this up and the reason why I get into the other things is because it's hard to tell how this game is going to go. Definitely when we get to the offense, the first key, as always, is run the ball. And it'll be even more crucial to do so this week. And I will give this to Kentucky. They are a decent, well, not a decent, they're the definition of mid defense, 65th in the nation, giving up 366.9 yards per game. However, just to compare them, they're the same defense that Mississippi State is. Now, if I knew we'd have 4 of our top 5 receivers, I'd feel differently on this, but knowing we could be missing 4 of our top 5 receivers. So I don't know. So anyways, I say all that to say Jaden Baugh will be big in this game. If we can get the run game going, if we can make them look like Ray Davis against us in 2023, that'll go a long way towards a Gator victory on a cold Kentucky night. So definitely need to get that running game going. And then for a second thing is I still have to see some diversity in the passing game. We looked a lot better in it last week against Georgia. We need to improve on it even more this week. And I think it's just building blocks. Bye week, Georgia starts one step. Now we've got to go step 2. The problem is we don't know who we're going to throw to. But I will say this, it's a nice opportunity for guys like, TJ Abrams, who last week, honestly, should have had a first down catch and didn't. Now you're going to get plenty of play. You need to be making those catches, and we're going to see probably more of guys like Tony Livingston, which say what you will, but also Amir Jackson at tight end, who there's an incompletion in the Georgia game on a seam route where if he breaks a little towards the middle and it's thrown just a little bit less on it, it's probably a big time completion. But also see Tank Hawkins come in, again, a second-year player, having him go out, do things. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw, since we have 4 games left in the season, Nashawn Montgomery, a true freshman, probably trying to save the red shirt for him. Well, he's got 2 catches on the year. Maybe this is one while you're short-handed. You go in and you play him as one of the 4 games he gets. Obviously, he's played a little bit before, but you put him in because you have to. Pretty good talent. We saw Tonkara play against Miami. This is a guy who's supposed to be really fast. So if you don't have a VB3, if you do not have an Aiden Mizell, guys who can really be burners out there, throw them out there. The worst that happens at this point is they don't perform up to what you need and perform like the true freshmen that they are. But hey, you got to do something, because if you like Mark Stoops' defense, no matter if they're not the Kentucky defenses of the past, if you let a Mark Stoops defense just key in on one part of your game, it's going to be a long day. We saw that 2 years ago in Lexington. I don't want to see it again. And So you got to have that diversity in the passing game. You've got to take advantage of stuff. And the last thing I'll say is DJ Lagway has to continue to show progress. There are times he's shown to do things that are incredible throughout the year, including in the Georgia game. Had some great moments, had some great throws. We've seen him make throws that honestly you're not going to see a lot of quarterbacks make. And then you see him make throws that no one should attempt and make. And then you have other things. So you're going to have to get better play because he's going to determine what happens in this game. Just being honest as far as the Florida offense, because you can have a great varied passing game, but if he's not hitting the open guy, and he has missed open guys, not just miss and throw, but not seen them. If you aren't hitting them or you aren't seeing them, it doesn't matter how great your passing game looks. And then if you're not doing that, you're not going to be able to run the ball very well. Now, Ball's going to do what he can do, but that's only so much. We talked about after the Georgia game when we talked about how the defensive line kind of, pinched in, and then we said we're still going to run it at a pinched in defensive line, and that didn't make any sense. We're going to have to find ways to get the run game going while being smart about what the defense is doing. We need J. Michael Sturdivant to step up, and I think he will. Transferring from UCLA has not really been the featured guy, but he has 17 receptions on the year, average of 13.8 yards per catch. If we're missing the other 4 of the top 5 receivers, you can argue what order they should be in. But definitely 4 of the top 5 may not play, with JMS being the only one to play. Hey, it's your chance to be featured. Go out there and make a name for yourself. Go out there and earn some money for the NFL by having a big game in a cold Kentucky night. As far as defense, I will say this. Florida's offense is only slightly better than Kentucky's. Florida's averaging 352.8 yards per game, and Kentucky's averaging 346.1. Again, I think some of this comes down to schedule, and some of it is just we've not played well at times. For example, at Miami, only 61 passing yards. Boz had 2 games of 46 yards, and those were LSU and Miami, and part of that was because we could not pass the ball so they could focus on the run. And that's why I say you got to be diverse in the passing game. You got to have DJ do this. And so our offense not looking great, but I bring that up because Kentucky's offense being 99th in the nation, the Gators are 95th. And just for kicks, LSU is 93rd. But anyways, the good thing is where Kentucky's defense is 65, Florida's defense currently sits at number 43 in the nation, only giving up 340.5 yards per game. So given that up, it's a good defense, not a top tier defense like statistically Georgia, Auburn, which are 21-22, have both faced Kentucky. We both faced Texas, which statistically is number 25. But then A&M is number 31. And then LSU, who we face at LSU, number 36. I bring up those other teams because we're going to talk about, hey, our offenses are close as far as rankings, but as far as how many top tier teams we played, and I'm not sure I can qualify, number 2 Toledo, based on quality of opponent. Do I think Toledo's as they are would be top 2 if they face an SEC schedule? No, but they also don't have SEC, talent. But I'm putting that ahead of they've faced the number 2 team. Yeah, but that's kind of a asterisk. They're also 5-4, where we faced Miami, who's number 12, but Miami considerably more talent. And I think the gap in our offenses is bigger than just what it says. Now, not saying either offense is necessarily great, but I do think in 2 offenses, especially ours being very injured and limited, and Kentucky's not being, too good at all. Let me go ahead and just pull up some of their performances this year. They don't have for their leading rusher. Let me just put it this way. Their leading rusher for the last 4 games, which are Georgia, Texas, Tennessee, and Auburn, have been 45 yards, 52 yards, 53 yards, or 44 against Georgia, 45 Texas, 52 against Tennessee, and 53 against Auburn. They have not been able to run the ball well. Now, with that said, they've been able to throw the ball pretty well, or at least they did against Georgia, who we talked about last week, does not have a good pass defense. And then against Texas, not the best pass defense. Florida threw the ball really well on them. Bully threw for 258. Tennessee, who I think has the worst statistical defense that Florida is going to face, or at least the worst one that we're going to face the rest of the way. And that's Tennessee, currently at 97th in the nation. They put up 330 yards passing, but then Auburn last week, who's not too much different than Florida's defense, only 161. So this is not a team that I think will be able to do a lot, especially if we've got Cormani McClain playing well and Sharif Denson stays healthy and plays well at the star. And then also getting, I almost said Dijon Johnson, getting Devin Moore playing well at the other corner. Safety play, Bryce Thornton needs to continue to play decently well. Jordan Castell needs to step up. If he's not stepping up, we need to see someone come in, whether it's Alfonso Allen or one of the freshmen, like we saw in that Mississippi State game. And we saw that they played decently well against a pretty good Mississippi State team. Mississippi State, it's easy to say, well, look at their record, Daniel Huggins. You say they're pretty good because they are a coin flip away from being 7-1. And that's not a joke. I know it sounds like it. Why would you say they're a coin flip away from being 7-1? They're 5-4, or actually I should say 8-1. Well, that Tennessee loss went to OT. Arguably, Mississippi State should have beat them. At Florida, we all know they should have beaten us. Why throw that pass if they don't throw a pass, if they just run it to center it and then kick a field goal? They beat us and then had one of the most epic collapses of all time in the final quarter against Texas when they dominated that game. They could be 8-1 right now going into this Georgia game, and this game has a lot more narrative. But because they've lost 3 coin flip games, they're 5-4 currently. But I also wouldn't be surprised. I'm going to throw this out there. I would not be surprised. I'm not necessarily picking the upset, but I would not be surprised if Mississippi State went into Georgia and got the win. Have to throw that out. Not went into Georgia. Played Georgia because it's in Starkville with all those dang cowbells. But anyways, going back, to Kentucky, of course, and just talking about, hey, Florida's done well. That's a very good Mississippi State team that those young DBs played well against, whether it was Hayward, whether it was Flowers, or whether it was Banks. We had a lot of young DBs in that game playing against a team that could be 8-1. Definitely has a chance against Georgia, in my opinion, unless there's something I haven't seen or an injury report I just don't know about that could beat Georgia this Saturday, and it wouldn't be too shocking. And we had a bunch of freshmen playing against them. If Castell or others aren't getting the job done, hey, we've got players that I feel can go in and play. So the first key on defense, I've said a lot about defense without saying much, but the first key I'd have on defense is definitely shut down that run and make them try and beat you with the pass. Why? Because again, I talked about their top rushers for the last 4 games. The highest has been 53 yards. And if we can make them one-dimensional, I like that because I do like our DBs. I do like Devin Moore. I do like Cormani McLean. I like Sharif Denson. I like Thornton, and I don't hate Castell, but he's definitely got to play better. But I also think the guys backing them up could potentially play well. And I'd say that's number 2 is play solid pass defense when you get a chance. Because if you play solid pass defense and they sure can't run the ball, then you're going to give this offense a chance to make something happen. And that's the thing about this Gators offense, especially if it's not predictable, which it really wasn't overall against Georgia last week. If it's not predictable, the talent's still there. Jaden Baugh is still there. JMS is still there. It's not like Abrams and Hawkins and Tunkara and Nashawn Montgomery or Hayden Hansen, who's been solid, if not spectacular in the past game. These are guys that are there, and we've seen Florida make something happen. I mean, we saw plays that were there last week for this offense. So if our defense can, stymie this not great Kentucky offense, there's a chance that against this subpar by Mark Stoops standard defense, we can get on the board. And if we can get ahead by, I would say 10 points or more, 2 scores, I'm not sure that this Kentucky team is built to come back. They did. Let me tell you, let's go back. In their FBS games, so their SEC games this season, they have not played an FBS opponent that was an SEC, where we've played Miami. Again, not a great game. Some of that I do attribute to Billy Ball and being predictable. And you can go watch my review on that. But in their FBS games, they've scored 23 on Ole Miss, who's currently 50th, I think, after last night's games in defense. It wasn't before that because I had checked and they're lower than 50. Sometime in the last few days games. And then South Carolina, only 13 points. Georgia, only 14 points. When they lost to Texas in overtime, 13 points. When they lost to Tennessee, they put up 34 points. But again, this Tennessee defense is, bottom 3rd in the nation, like 97th, like terrible. So they did put up points there at home against Tennessee, but also Tennessee was so far ahead of that game that I would kind of give a wink and a nod, in that game, as Kentucky did get quite a bit early. I mean, had 21 at half, put up 13 in the second half, but it's still not the same as when they faced decent quality defenses And I do believe Florida's is a decent quality defense. Again, I talked about some of the defenses that they faced in the SEC. South Carolina, technically, as we talked about, only gave up 13 points, is statistically a few yards per game worse than Florida. So we're talking about Florida's 43, South Carolina's 46. And that's where I'd kind of expect. I mean, Auburn and Georgia, we talked about 21, 22. The difference in that is 30 yards per game with Florida. Again, this is a Kentucky team that against these better opponents have not been able to score. And I think this Florida defense could definitely hold Kentucky to 14 points, 17 points. Just a matter of getting the offense to do that. And my third key is get some turnovers. Kentucky can't run it very well. Maybe that lets you drop a few guys back into coverage, that back in the zone. By all means, do something, make a catch and a pick, maybe get a defensive score. I mean, we've won in interesting ways at Kroger Field. And that is, whether it's 14-9, I believe, back in 2015, or the day my brother got married against Kentucky in 2017, where twice they left guys literally uncovered, guys there by the end zone, waving his hands, saying, hey, throw to me. I'm uncovered. And Del Rio throws it to the wide open guy, and that's the game-winning touchdown. And then 2019, Franks goes down. Trask comes in, and the legend of Kyle Trask is officially born. And then 2021 happens. Dan Mullen smiling as he walks off the field, losing only the second loss to Kentucky in like 40 years for the Gators. Dan Mullen smiling, running to midfield. And then there was 2023 where Ray Davis and Kentucky just pounded us and blew us out. And I say all that about our last, decade of trips to say that funny things happen in this game in Kroger Field. I mean, heck, you can go back. I think it was 2003 when Jared Lorenzen, freshman Chris Leak, big lead for Kentucky. Florida comes back, improbable comeback for the win. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, go ahead and look that up on YouTube. Definitely a good game. And I'm saying now with all these injuries for both teams, this could be another fun chapter in the Florida-Kentucky rivalry. And we'll see. And I say rivalry, in quotes. It's not a rival like Florida State or Tennessee, Georgia, LSU, things like that, but in a way where it's kind of heated. But I will say that one thing I hate as, again, Florida, my entire life, did not lose to Kentucky until 2018. And then Florida lost in 2021. And then it was a 3-game streak. If Kentucky wins this week, they'll have won 4 out of 5 against Florida. And then Florida returns to Lexington next year. In the oddity of how the new scheduling works in the SEC, Florida gets to take this trip. Now, I'm not too upset because I've things up in Cincinnati I'd like to do, which if you're going to Kentucky, most likely you're flying into Cincinnati. There are some places that go to Lexington. But with that said, yeah, it's definitely an interesting time. And I can't do Florida losing 4 out of 5 to Kentucky. I don't think that happens. I think Florida's defense overall being as healthy as it is. I mean, we can talk about guys on the injury report like Caleb Banks, who only played against LSU, LJ McCray, who hasn't played all year. It is what it is, Dijon Johnson being out. But at the same time, you've got Devin Moore here, Sharif Denson here. You've got Cormani McClain. You've got both your safeties. You've got Aaron Childs. You've got Miles Graham. You've got Jaden Robinson. George Gump. There's so much talent on this defense. I think the defense will be the difference maker in this game. And I think you do have a Jaden Ball interesting game, especially if he gets going. I think that opens things up just enough for the Gators to get a win. I'm going to call it 24-14 for the Gators. And before we get out of here, if no one saw this on my Twitter last year, so if you're listening, maybe check this out around the 36-minute mark on the YouTube video. I'm going to play a video from last year. If you didn't see it on my X, this is something that has been suggested to be going in the opening. And once I redo the opening fully, this may go in, or maybe it goes in at the end. We'll see. But I had to watch that stupid Cash Daniels clip of him taking the Gatorades and doing the Stone Cold. Maybe it was Waters. Either way, for years after they beat us in 2018. And, well, last year after we beat Kentucky, I just had to do this small 3-second clip. But I might do it again on a cold Kentucky night if we win. And one more time, because video is always fun. Let's go ahead and one more time. And with that said, let's go ahead. Let's get out here. This is one of the longest preview episodes I've ever done that's not been talking with someone. So thank you for putting up with it. For those that did, thank you all for listening. And as always, go Gators.